Okay, Bruce, I know you can't see the chat, but if you want to go ahead and start.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Welcome everyone to the Scottish Learning Festival. Today's session is Scots Language in Scotland Schools Today. My name is Bruce Johnson and I am the Scots Language Coordinator for Education Scotland. Right, today's session. Today we'll be looking at both an overview of what is happening with Scots in schools across Scotland, as well as sharing news and new initiatives. There will be information for those just getting started, as well as those who are established in their practice. There will be a Q&A at the end of the session. Please feel free to post comments and questions in the chat. While I'm presenting, I can't see them, but we'll make time for Q&A at the end. If you see someone asking a question that you'd be interested in hearing the answer to as well, please feel free to just hover over and give it a thumbs up and show that that's a question that I should prioritize. And this session is being recorded, so it will be available to be shared afterwards as well. Right, let's have a quick look at Scots language policy. So as progress is made to raise the status of Scots language, important milestones have been achieved in terms of government and education policy. Many schools like to begin their Scots journey by looking at the existing policy and how other schools have implemented Scots. So in 2015, Education Scotland and the Scottish Government launched the Scots Language Policy, which recognised Scots, together with English and Gaelic, as the three Indigenous languages of Scotland. Scots has also been included in the Council of Europe's Charter on Regional or Minority Languages, and in more recent policy, such as the United Nations Charter Rights of the Child. So, the educational benefits, what is most important for using Scots in schools, is something that we have been documenting and producing resources on for a number of years now. So Scots has a place within CFE at any or all ages and stages of the school curriculum. And you can see there, I've put up a link to the CFE briefing, which is a guide to the Curriculum for Excellence and Scots Language, and that's available from Education Scotland. We also have papers similar to that, which gather evidence from visiting schools. The report, Scots Language in the CFE, is another report that's available on the Hub, where you can see good examples of best practice from across the country. More and more schools across Scotland are developing their use of Scots and producing evidence which shows the educational benefit. And we see other evidence, such as the number of schools reporting that they offer Scots as an L3 in 1+2, and numbers from the SQA of schools who offer their learners the Scots Language Award. And both of these are continuing to go up each year. In this slide, I'm going to be looking at some examples of starter resources. We're going to do a quiz through the curriculum in this session today, and I'm going to try and cover each of the levels and different stages of the curriculum. So here, with a focus on early years and into primary, we look at introducing Scots as early as possible, creates the best learning environment and connected progression for learners throughout their education experience. The Scottish Book Trust is a great place to go for people who are looking to get started. You can see on the slide here that I've got some Scots books for bairns. And with a focus on early years, we've got There Was a Wee Lassie Who Swallowed a Midgie. Now the Scottish Book Trust create these reading lists with suggestions for all sorts of different age groups. So while some of these are suitable for early years, perhaps first level, there's also reading lists for upper primary, teenagers, young adults, and suggestions from the Book Trust that they understand to be good for using in schools and for certain age groups. If you were introducing Scots for the first time in your class, then you might like to look at a Will Kent Sang or a popular translation. You can see there we've got Three Craws, the Three Crows. That's part of a book bug resource that the Book Trust offer. I've also got a picture there for the Glasgow Gruffalo's Wain, which is a translation of Julia Donaldson into Glaswegian Scots by Elaine C. Smith. While there's plenty of songs for older children as well, and plenty of translations all the way up into secondary, there's a great deal of really good resources for early years and into first level as well. Now, I'm going to discuss CPD at the end, but an important point to emphasize throughout this presentation is teacher confidence. That's why I titled this slide, I find it a bit of a fankle. So I find it all a bit of a fankle. And that's okay. Not everyone was, during their teacher training, given any information on Scots language. It's something I do a lot of now, visiting universities, speaking to the ITE students, and they're all really keen to use Scots in the classroom. But I'm aware that for a lot of us, it perhaps wasn't part of our education, and it might be something we need to have a chat with colleagues or someone like myself about. But I also think it's good to give an example right now of some of the resources that are available that learners can use independently. So sticking with the theme of early years, first level, early primary, this is a resource or a selection of resources from the Scots Language Centre, from their learning website. And you can see that these are essentially games and puzzles and fun activities that Laura Green has developed. And these can be, as I say, can be used independently. There's a lot more on Laura's site, on the Scots Language Centre's website. And these are great resources that learners can engage with without too much from the teacher if you are perhaps at the start of your Scots language journey and not yet too confident. Moving on to look further up the BGE and up into some of the upper primary stages, there is the option to look at Scots as an L3 language in 1+2. So on this slide, we've got some basic vocabulary, and we have the German on the left, Scots in the middle, and English on the right. Now, many authorities are including Scots within their 1+2 learning plans. Scots meets the criteria to be included as an L3. One popular way to learn about Scots is making language links to other modern languages that learners may also be studying. So I've got the basic vocabulary here. You can see the English on the right, and then the Scots. We have mare, leicht, nicht, gang, kirk, ken, and lang. And we have the German there to the left. Now, that could easily be done differently. German is obviously a popular L2, but you could easily do this with a completely different set of basic vocabulary. You could also be looking at French so that your L3 studies can complement your L2. Now, there's a lot of links to be made between languages. You'll see how similar many of the German and Scots words have so many similar features. Now, an important point to make at this stage is that there are such things as sister languages. So if we take a look at Scots and some Scandinavian languages, a point that I'll I'll emphasize now is that Scots and English are sister languages. That means the two languages come from the one root. This is a very similar situation with the Scandinavian languages. Today, we have Swedish, Danish, Norwegian, but they come from, and they are sister languages, which come from one root or have one key influence over them. Now, you can look at the Scots vocabulary again, just basic vocabulary. The top three words there, hoose, oot, after, very close to their English equivalents. Then we see examples of slightly more dense Scots vocabulary. Flit, which is to move. Did you flit from Glasgow to Edinburgh? And you can see there similarities with Swedish, Danish, and Norwegian. Greet, as in I'm greeting. I had to do a presentation. It made me greet. Or bairn, I hear a classroom of bairns. And you can see how similar the Scots word is to some of these neighbouring languages in Scandinavia that have helped influence Scots. What about within Scots? Now this slide that I always like to show. I really like this piece of evidence. It's from 5E Primary School, a teacher called Mrs. McNabb, who sent this to me. And you can see here that Fiona is concentrating on changes in vocabulary, not only between English and Scots, but within Scots dialects. Now, I really like this kind of learning because it gives the bairns the chance to focus on their local language. Which words do they use? Which words do they understand? And I know from speaking to Fiona at 5E that while the bairns in her class had a knowledge of Doric, Fiona herself was from Orkney. So she was using her knowledge of language and knowledge of the Orcadian dialect to compare and contrast with the words that the bairns were using, the Doric words, and then examining, is that also the word used across Scots and Scotland generally? And how does it change from the English? So there's huge amounts of learning going on here, and I think it's fantastic to see this champion of the local tongue and local vocabulary as much as something that's national. Moving up through the BGE, primary to secondary, from primary to secondary. As we have been discussing thus far, a progression through all levels of CFE is the best way for learners to succeed in language learning and improving literacy skills. So if not already, then secondary is a great time to look at both the history and development of Scots language, as well as practicing and improving understanding and communicating. I've got an image there on the slide of an animated History of Scots video that we produced at Education Scotland. Now that's on the National Improvement Hub. It's also on YouTube. National Improvement Hub works exactly the same as a search engine like Google or YouTube. If you search for Scots language, you'll see resources that use Scots. There's a wide variety of materials, and the History of Scots is one of the most popular ones. The History of Scots is essentially an answer to the question, what is Scots? It's a great place to start. Depending on the age of your learners, I'd recommend watching the video first yourself and considering if it's right for the age and stage of your class. But it's essentially a tour through how we got to where we are today, looking at some of the important factors that shape the language, understanding why it's not had the same history as other languages like English or Gaelic, and where it sits in Scotland today. Moving up CFE and BG again. If not already, then the option for learners to do their creative writing in Scots should be extended to all learners. there's great resources for all ages on the Scots House website, particularly for creative writing. I definitely recommend looking at Matthew Fitt's site and exploring the resources there. For schools already doing so and looking for further challenges and projects, there are numerous online resources which work great either as personal projects or in groups where peer learning can be developed. Like the Scots Language Centre websites from Laura Green that I started looking at earlier, a lot of these can be used independently. The picture to the right there, Sounds of the City, that's a website that I had a chance to use in depth with learners during the lockdown when I was doing remote learning with eSchool. So as I'm sure anyone watching this understands from their own time, you're trying to find ways of engaging a remote learner, a remote class of learners. And the Sounds of the City website was one of the most popular resources I got a chance to use. This was with it was a mixed class of sort of S1, S2, some S3s. And you can see on the little picture I put there that there's resources. And a lot of the resources are around listening and responding. So there's various different ways that the learners can engage, but I would get them to either listen to a story or take one of these quizzes. And there's either multiple choice options, or you could set your own questions that the learners can write their own answers to. This, I think one of the reasons this was most popular is it was a very modern resource. The voices and the recordings of the people speaking are recognizable, they're modern, and learners were given the opportunity perhaps to explore knowledge that they don't always get to share in the class if Scots isn't included. So by focusing on this, you are giving the reluctant learners perhaps a chance to contribute, or learners who didn't know that words that they might be using at home, that they hear others using outside of school, could actually be an area of expertise. And there was a lot of enthusiasm from the class I was working with as they were doing the quizzes. The quizzes are marked immediately. It's a great interactive resource that I definitely recommend people explore. Continuing on that theme of partnerships with universities, this slide is called Speak for Yourself. A new project that I would like to tell you about is in partnership with the University of Glasgow, and the uni and I will be visiting schools in the spring of 2022. And we'd love to hear from schools interested in being part of the project. We aim to visit 10 schools twice, with the focus each time being on learners' voices and speech patterns. And this would be a great project to be part of if you have done no Scots work before, because that's exactly what the university are interested in. It's very much building on a project that Glasgow did before, which is a live website you can go out and visit now, called the Scots Syntax Atlas. It's very much created by linguists who are studying language, but it's also done in partnership with visiting areas of the country and doing sessions in schools to get examples of learners, how they speak, what they like to say, and how they think about language. That's why I'm saying that it would be a great project for those who have done no Scots. Don't worry if you think, I'd like to be involved in that, but we haven't done anything. It won't matter, because it's so much about just what people naturally say and what their natural perceptions of language are. It's simply gathering data. There's no wrong answers. It's a project that I think will be really popular, and it's going to produce new teaching resources. So if there's schools out there, particularly secondary schools, particularly upper, probably senior phase classes, but we're open to whoever would like to be involved, then it would be great to hear from you, because the uni and I would be delighted to come visit and to do sessions with the bairns, speak about Scots, hear how they use language and what their thoughts on language use is. And it'll all go towards this university-funded project. Right, into the senior phase. For anyone who hasn't looked at the SQA Scots Language Award before, this is just a very quick slide just to give a quick idea that it's there and what the lessons can involve. So with a S4, 5 or 6 class, you can be looking at what this term Scots language means, to what extent the learners themselves use the language, where and when they think the language is used. Do they think it's something that's only in the north of Scotland? Do they think it's something that's only spoken on the streets? Individual perceptions of the importance and relevance. So there's a lot of learning about the language, about who we are in Scotland today. And there's a great number of possibilities for developing your Scots writing, developing your confidence when using Scots in a class discussion. I'm not going to say too much about this right now because just last Saturday, then the SQA and me were recording a webinar for their Understanding Standards session. That webinar will go out in October, and it's me and the SQA verifiers. Jamie Fairbairn from Banff Academy gives an in-depth look at his class and approaches to assessment, as on the slide, learning, teaching, assessment, how you mark what the learners have done, how you feel confident you're awarding the right mark, the right grade. And I've done material in that goes through how you can offer it. It's a sort of starter pack, if you will. So please watch this space if you're in the senior phase and you're interested in offering the award. There's a bespoke webinar there that goes into all of that, which will be going out in October from the SQA. Now, teacher CPD. Obviously, it depends on what your confidence in using Scots is, and also what your confidence in using Scots in the classroom is. But regardless of whether you feel there's many hurdles or just one, I'd love to hear from you, because it's my job to assist anyone who's wanting to teach Scots in the classroom. And if they're not feeling confident, then I need to help get you there. But the course that I recommend the most is by the Open University. So it's a free course to anyone across the world, any member of the public, but it's a course that was written by Scots experts, academics, some teachers, and some young, some old people from across Scotland. And it's essentially everything you need to know about the Scots language. You can do the entire course, or you could use it like a textbook. You could dip in and out of certain sections, because the course is organized under various themes. If you want to look at Scots and song, you can read the Steve Byrne authored section. If you want to read about Scots and the history of Scotland, that's written by James Robertson. You could read about dialect diversity, education, religion, sport. It's a very engaging, interactive course, lots of recordings, lots of opportunities to hear Scots being read, lots of opportunities to record yourself and share that with others. Having completed the course, the aim is for learners to understand Scots as a living language. It's one that's alive and being used today, as well as understanding the history and linguistic development of Scots. Also to have more confidence, knowledge and skills in the use of Scots in the classroom, and an increased awareness of other related resources and how to access them. I've only managed to cover a small amount of the great resources that are out there, whether it's Education Scotland and the National Improvement Hub, Scots Language Centre. There's the Scots Language Dictionary has an app that you can download. The Scots Hoose website, Scottish Book Trust, this from the Open University. There's a great amount of CPD materials, but if you don't know what you're looking for, or you do know what you're looking for, but you can't find it, please email me. Please get in touch and let me know, and I'll help as best I can. And I also think it's worth mentioning now that this large Open University CPD course has been incredibly popular across the world. And the GTCS has asked if we can create an accredited course. And we're very far through that process. So hopefully in the upcoming year, then there'll be a GTC accredited course for teaching Scots. And that'll be a real boon to the Scots language and a great resource for teachers for doing CPD. Right, we've got about 15 minutes left. There's my email address, bruce.jansen@educationscotland.gov.scot. And I'm going to stop sharing now, and I'll see if there's any questions that we need to answer. I am not seeing the chat, Tracy.
Right, okay, that's fine, Bruce. So we've got a question here. Is there any kinds of suggested progressive programme of work, suggested plan for primary Scots as L3 as part of the 1+2 languages? And is there one platform or resource that brings it all together, all these different resources together into one place?
Two very good questions. Second one, probably the best place that has a sort of list of everything. The two places that I would recommend, one is the SQA UShare site. I don't know if people are familiar with that, but if you were to Google UShare SQA Scots, then there's a huge amount of material there. All the sort of links that I've talked about and many more are kept there. I should also say that on Glow and on Yammer, where we have the Scots Blether, there are not only all these links and all these different websites, but there's also material that teachers themselves have uploaded. It's a place for news items, and there's also a great deal that teachers have uploaded themselves, whether it's something like, here's a lesson I did, or here's our Scots plan. The question about L3 1+2, that's something I can definitely help with. The one thing I would say, a lot of places like to make it unique to either their class, their learners, their part of the country, but all these things can be adapted, and there's materials out there that I can share. If someone was looking to do that, we could write one together for that specific class.
Okay, and Laura from the Scots Language Centre has also shared a link to some resources that they have as well that people might find useful. Another question, Bruce, is if we were to complete the Open University course now, would the GTCS accreditation be backdated? I don't know if you'll be able to answer that one.
Yeah, I can. It'll be a separate course, but if you were to do the Open University course now, you'd have done a large amount of the work. It would simply be the direct classroom teaching parts that you hadn't done. So essentially, you'd have done all the reading behind the scenes, but you wouldn't have done, because the GTS course is going to be about writing your own lesson plan, delivering your own lesson, getting feedback from course tutors, sharing your findings and your experience with others who are doing the course. So I would definitely recommend signing up to the existing OU course. But if you're interested in doing the GTCS one, tell me, and I'll keep you up to date about when it'll be going live, and make sure you use your time as best you can. Thanks very much to Laura for posting any resources. I haven't seen the links, but I'm sure they'll be brilliant. And Laura's probably put up lots of good ones that complement things that I've been saying. So thanks to Laura for that.
There's another one here, Bruce, which is, can the awards be adapted to suit learners with additional support needs who work predominantly within a learning support environment?
I haven't had that request come through before, but it's something already I'm thinking would be very good to have and very interesting. That person, I would love to get an email and hear more about what they're thinking, how best I can support them in setting it up. I'm sure the SQA would be really pleased to help as well. So it's not something I've seen before, but I think it would be possible and would be really good to explore together.
That's all the questions that I can see, Bruce.
Perfect. Well, I think that's us done then. So unless there's any more.
That's all we've got, Bruce, and I've popped your email address into the chat in case anyone wants to contact you directly.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much for your help today, Tracy. And I think this session is officially finished now.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone for coming.